The observation deck of Station Kepler-7 hummed with the usual cacophony of 100 alien species conducting their business. Alara Knox stood at the viewport, her reflection ghosting across the star-studded void beyond. 3 months into her assignment as humanity's cultural liaison, and she still marveled at the sheer diversity of the galactic community. The Gentari with their crystalline exoskeletons, the gaseous Vrel who communicated through chromatic displays, the towering Kryn warriors who considered peace treaties a form of performance art. But it was the Vakari that fascinated her most. They were a feline species, bipedal but retaining the predatory grace of their evolutionary ancestors. Their society valued strength above all else. Vakari cubs were thrust into combat training the moment they could walk, taught that vulnerability was death and weakness was sin. She had read the reports, watched the cultural briefings, but nothing prepared her for actually meeting them. Human Knox. The voice was rough, layered with the growling undertones typical of Vakari speech. Commander Thys approached, her russet fur marked with the silver scars of countless battles. The delegation from Vakar Prime has arrived. They bring their young ones for the cultural exchange program. Alara turned, offering a smile that showed her flat, prey species teeth. She'd learned months ago that this unsettled most predator races, but she refused to hide what made her human. Wonderful. How many cubs? 5. Thys's whiskers twitched. A sign of discomfort Alara had learned to recognize. The youngest is Rune. He is small for his age. His parents hope exposure to other species will strengthen his spirit. There it was again, that obsession with strength. Alara had seen it across a dozen warrior cultures in the galaxy. The Kryn beat their children to toughen them. The Scarix abandoned the weak on hostile planets. Each species had their own brutal philosophy, and each looked at humanity's protective instincts toward their young with something between confusion and contempt. The cubs arrived in formation, their tiny claws clicking against the deck plating. They wore miniature armor, their faces set in fierce expressions that would have been intimidating if they weren't so obviously children. The largest, a bronze-furred male, couldn't have been more than 6 standard years old. The smallest, Ruin, lagged behind, his silver-striped fur looking almost downy in the station's lights. "I am Krath," the bronze cub announced, beating his small chest. "I have killed 3 training drones and earned my first scar." He displayed a thin line across his shoulder with obvious pride. The other cubs echoed similar boasts. They postured and growled, each trying to outdo the other in displays of ferocity. All except Rune, who stood at the back, his golden eyes darting nervously around the observation deck. Alara knelt down, bringing herself to their level. The movement made several cubs flinch back in their culture. Lowering oneself was submission, but she'd learned that humans could rewrite the rules simply by refusing to play by them. "Hello, warriors," she said softly. "I'm Alara. Welcome to Kepler-7. Krath stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "We do not fear you, human. Your species has no claws, no fangs, no armor. You are weak." "Probably," Alara agreed, and the cubs blinked in confusion. Adults didn't agree with accusations of weakness. "I can't run as fast as you, or see as well in the dark, or hear a heartbeat from across a room. Then how do humans survive?" one of the other cubs asked, genuine curiosity breaking through the aggressive facade. "We hug," Alara said simply. Silence. The universal translator struggled with the concept, cycling through several approximations before settling on the Vakari equivalent, a word that meant something like ritual vulnerability embrace. "That is," Krath searched for words. "That is foolish, maybe," Alara said. "But it works for us." She opened her arms in demonstration. "When a human child is scared, we don't tell them to be strong, we tell them it's okay to be scared. And then we hold them until they feel safe again." The cubs stared. Their young minds struggled to reconcile this with everything they'd been taught. Weakness was death. Fear was shameful. To admit either was to invite destruction. But then Alara noticed Rune. The smallest cub was trembling, his tail tucked tight against his legs. His eyes were wide and glassy. She recognized that look. She'd seen it in her niece after her first day of kindergarten, in her nephew after a nightmare, in every frightened child she'd ever known. "Ruin," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The cub's facade cracked. His lip quivered. He tried to growl, tried to bare his tiny fangs, tried to do what every Vakari was supposed to do when challenged. But he was just a child, far from home, surrounded by aliens, and terrified. I am brave," he whispered. But his voice broke. Ilara's heart broke with it. She'd seen this across the galaxy, children forced to be warriors before they'd learned to be kids. She opened her arms wider, an invitation without pressure. "You don't have to be brave right now," she said. For a moment, nothing happened. The other cubs watched. This watched. The whole observation deck seemed to hold its breath. Ruin stood frozen, caught between what he'd been taught and what he desperately needed. Then he broke. The little cub ran forward, abandoning all pretense of fierceness, and crashed into Ilara's arms. He buried his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking with suppressed sobs. She wrapped him up, one hand cradling his head, the other rubbing circles on his back the way her mother had done for her. "It's okay," she murmured. "I've got you. You're safe." Ruin clung to her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting universe. His claws pricked through her uniform, but she didn't care. She just held him, letting him be small and scared and young. Behind him, something extraordinary happened. Krath took a hesitant step forward. Then another cub. Then another. One by one, the fierce little warriors abandoned their aggressive postures. They gathered around Ilara, and when she extended her arm to include them, they pressed close. A pile of cubs seeking comfort they'd never been allowed to want. Commander Thys made a sound half growl, half something else. When Ilara looked up, the warrior's eyes were strange and bright. "In 300 years of Vakari history," Thys said quietly, "no cub has ever been held like this. We thought it would make them weak." She paused, watching Rune's shaking finally subside. "But I see now. Perhaps we made them weak by never teaching them it was safe to be strong later." Ilara smiled, her arms full of purring cubs who'd forgotten they were supposed to be warriors. "We have a saying on Earth. You can't pour from an empty cup. Children need to be filled with love and safety before they can be expected to face the universe." Ruin pulled back slightly, his golden eyes meeting hers. "Do all humans do this?" "The hugging? The good ones," Ilara said. "The best ones. Then humans must be very strong," the small cub declared, with absolute certainty. "Because I feel stronger now than I ever have before." And in that moment, surrounded by cubs who'd attempted to act brave but chose vulnerability instead, Ilara understood why humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community. Not for their technology, not for their resources, but for this, the radical act of teaching the universe that sometimes the strongest thing anyone could do was open their arms and offer a hug. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and cold. But on Station Kepler 7, in a small corner of the infinite dark, warmth blazed bright.